All right, boss man, welcome to the Job Sliders podcast. So I'm talking with my friend, and he has been working in the traditional cannabis market for how long?
I'd say now a good 3 years that I've been not just messing around in my house with a tent.
So how did you get started? What was your first job that helped you slide into growing?
Essentially, I had my own grow around 17, 16, and it was a medical small little grow in my house. And through essentially internet networking, I had found somebody who was a grower that had a facility nearby me in my area. And I met with him because he wanted some genetics that I had. And so I gave him some seeds from...
Is that what that means by genetics? He wanted your genetics, so you have seeds. That sounds a little...
Yeah, no, he wanted the genetics I had. It was a cherry sherb, so it was a chopped cherry times sherb cake. Okay. And it was this company, Bean Fiends. They're really good out in Michigan. And he wasn't able to get his hands on the pack, so I gave him a few, and then through that, I was like, if you ever need any manual labor work, just anything I can do to get my hands on. And from there, I think I started just cleaning, because one thing with growing is you have to be, you're just a glorified janitor at a certain point. It's just a lot of cleanliness shit and making sure everything's clean. Yeah, I just started doing that, and then eventually I started getting more confident in my ability to understand plants and understand issues within plants. And so I started being more useful and started making my way up to where I was then making decisions in the grow and deciding what we fed our plants, deciding what genetics we used, deciding, just making decisions instead of just doing labor, which was nice.
So you started out, like you said, as a glorified janitor and worked your way up. What would you say the biggest takeaway piece of info or experience that you've got from that was?
It's not easy work. You have to be...
I'm sure it's not.
You have to be extremely clean, and you have to be very knowledgeable about the chemicals you're using to clean, because a lot of stuff can have weird interactions and create just a whole bunch of issues. You need to make sure that the stuff you're spraying is safe for your plants. You need to make sure you're not giving anyone incurable diseases by having crazy chemicals on stuff. And so that's a lot of work. You need to make sure bugs aren't an issue, and in Illinois that can be a bit of a big issue. So yeah, it's just a lot of juggling. I realize it's not always going to be fun. It's not always going to be the harvest day where you take it down and you get to look at big, beautiful plants. It's going to be a lot of just labor and stuff you don't want to do. But you have to do that in order to be successful, because the people who don't do that are usually not,
Yeah, getting used to doing the minute, easy tasks.
Absolutely.
Repetitive. Do you feel there's... I know we talked about this last time, but do you feel there's a major difference between the product in traditional to, what did you call it, contemporary market?
The traditional and then the conventional.
The conventional market.
I would say there's a big quality shift.
Oh, shit.
I think the traditional market has better quality, because I think that there's more of a culture of quality in there. I think a lot of people who own big corporations just want to make money, and that doesn't really coincide with the traditional market. And also, taxes can be very heavy, which make it very difficult to make a profit. And so a lot of people cut corners and don't throw out batches if they're bad. If something tests positive with mold, they're gonna find a way to remediate it and make it into a profit, which is just something that doesn't really happen.
If something goes wrong, are you supposed to just throw it out?
Hell yeah. You don't. If somebody has cancer and they're gonna smoke something, you don't want them to inhale botrytis and a bunch of other fungal fucking things, aspergillus, that could fuck with their immune system. So it's just that shit's very important, and there's not a lot of care for quality. Colorado market's better that way, I'd say, for quality, but Illinois, just a lot of the newer underdeveloped markets, there's not a lot of good quality or good companies even. Just a lot of corporate cannabis, which I'm very against. Okay,
so if you had to give one piece of advice to someone who's interested in the cannabis market in general, what would your advice be?
Be patient. It's kind of weird. It changes a lot. You're gonna have to be very flexible. You're gonna have to do stuff you're probably a little uncomfortable with. Laws change, and they don't usually notify grows. sometimes.
Oh, they don't notify you all?
Well,
if the
they
law
do,
changes?
but they don't notify you enough. Like Metric is basically the company that takes care of the tracking of what you grow and how you use it to make sure you're not selling stuff illegal. So from seed to harvest, like every bit of leaf is accounted for with Metric. And Metric is implemented in most states. It was implemented in Oregon, but almost nobody listed their stuff to Metric. And I think the same thing happened in Oklahoma, where just nobody listed their stuff under Metric because Metric never emailed them. They never reached out. They were never like, hey, you need to do this. So it was like 4 years of just nobody registered their stuff.
And what is this company?
Metric. It's just they track.
Oh, they're the trackers for the industry?
They just keep accountability. Actually, they were talking about using it in the government recently, which people in the weed industry thought was hilarious because we know Metric is terrible and doesn't really do a good job. So they didn't really enforce it in Oklahoma, and now people are like really fucked because they haven't been tracking anything for like 4 years. And how do you go back and I can't do that. You know what I mean? I couldn't.
You can't account for all that.
Yeah, and it just I get why they have Metric, but at the same time, it's so much hoops and just shit for people to deal with to like make it hard to grow weed and just make it difficult to have the industry thrive. And that's why like in the traditional market, you're seeing facilities that are just as clean as the legal ones, but like they don't have to go through those loopholes. They don't have to worry about microbe content. They don't have to worry about all that stuff, and they can just grow it the way that they know is the best. And the laws that are being made for regulation aren't really made by people who know what they're talking about.
Right.
And nobody really knows what they're talking about because it's not researched. It's federally, like, nobody really, like,
right.
There's never been any federal research, so it's like, it's a mystery. So to make laws on it, I think it's silly until we actually, like, fully understand. I think Prop 215 in California, when it was just like, do whatever you want, I think that was sick. I think that was, like, the peak of, I mean, obviously it was, like, crazy and not all of it was good, but it allowed for a lot of, like, ingenuity and, like, creativity to be brought to the scene. And I think that's why, like, California's market has kind of sent ripples to every other market. And yeah, I think if more states kind of just chilled out and stopped regulating it so heavily, I think it would do better. And I think the traditional market would bleed into the conventional more. But until that happens, there's going to be a large traditional market. Like, it's not going away.
Yeah, not going away.
Nor should it.
I agree. I completely agree. Got to foster that competition. All right, my man, last question. Desert Island, you got all the weed in the world. What are you bringing? You got 5 items.
Desert Island?
You got all the weed in the world.
I would bring, like, oats and barley and, like, cover crops so I could just, like, grow my own food forever. You know, like, and I can use the oats and barley to, like, make the soil better. Because, like, they're, like, yeah, whatever. But, like, I don't know. Get some good soil health going, run some good crops. Maybe, like, a dog. Like, a dog would be nice.
A dog? Yeah, that'd be fire, bro.
Yeah, I'd fuck with a dog.
I think that's 3. That's 3 items, bro. You got 2 more.
A bottle of Hennessy and some rolling papers.
Yeah, that's fire, bro. All right, where do you see your career sliding next?
That's a good question. I don't really know. I'm kind of stuck between staying in the traditional and then eventually going to the conventional, but like going to the conventional would be a significant pay decrease and just I wouldn't really enjoy it as much, you know, more taxes, just a lot of stuff I don't like, less creativity. I'd have to have a boss and, you know, I have to like a
have to have a boss.
Well, yeah, but like then usually the people who own these companies don't really grow, like they're just owners. And so it's like I have someone who doesn't really grow telling me like what I can and can't use in my plants, and like I feel like that would frustrate me, you know. I like to have creative control.
Totally understand. Well, thank you, my man.
Absolutely.
Hell yeah. Bet.
Of course.
That was perfect.